Okay, Ann, thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time.
Such a pleasure to be with you today.
And this is, as I mentioned before we started recording, a subject that is near and dear to my heart, something that I've covered for a long time, probably one of the first acronyms of in the education space, which has lots of acronyms.
And
Where I
lots of
was like,
derivations since.
yes, correct. Yeah, because we can, as we go, we can go from STEM to STEAM, right? That could be a part of the conversation. But STEM really is one of those acronyms that I recall always hearing about it and talking about it at sessions at ISTE or other events, at our own events. Um, and I would nod my head sagely, like I know exactly what we're talking about. But there's so much more to it than that. And I know that you've had 13 years experience working with this subject. I guess we could just start off, as we still must do, I guess, talking about everything within the context of the pandemic. How has STEM survived? What changes have come in that subject matter from the work that you've done, before the pandemic, seeing it through the crisis and kind of coming out the other end? Kind of give us a little bit of a state of play of where you see the subject matter.
Sure. So, Samsung has been running this competition called Solve for Tomorrow since 2010. And along with classrooms across the country, we've been listening and learning about what the state of the classroom is. And during COVID, what we saw was it was really challenging for students to really deeply engage in STEM classes. There was no lab period or really hands-on engagement quite in the same way, because virtual lab time and real lab time, hands-on learning, was a very different paradigm for them. And so while there are all these great programs that do virtual data generation for us to do analysis, there's nothing like being in a lab and doing it yourself. And so teachers have really had to make up for that time in unique and different ways to make sure that students who, STEM subjects are considered hard subjects for many students, right? It's not the easier subjects across the array of classes that they take. They've really had to work hard and find unique ways to capture those students who are kind of interested in STEM to really come back full circle with all of that lab time really lost. And so teachers, we know from a lot of the data, including a survey that we've done with teachers who participate in the contest, really, they're both burned. There's a lot of burnout
Yeah.
amongst teachers and trying to make up for lost time. We know a lot about sort of the learning gap that took place, especially in hard subjects, but we know that students have a passion for it, and there's a lot of new techniques and ways to realize STEM in a non-textbook way, like the way Solve for Tomorrow runs, that really captures the real-life application of STEM that draws them into the how, which is the subject matter that they need to learn to make a difference.
So it seems like I'll throw out another acronym or phrase, but project-based learning, right? PBL kind of sometimes goes hand in hand with STEM. Talk a little bit about what you were saying. I mean, we're in remote learning, that just wasn't happening, right? And now we're kind of back to whatever the new normal is, and we're back into the classrooms. How do you take the idea of PBL and STEM and work it into not just those hard subjects that you mentioned? I mean, in terms of like not going to science class, but like creating a project maybe that employs all the different subject matters into a project-based sort of setup that involves a STEM project.
Sure. So our solution working with classrooms around the country is really to highlight the importance of real life application or problem-based learning, PBL, tools into a multidisciplinary approach. And ours tends to lean into STEM because that's the genesis of the challenge that we've presented, which is show how STEM could be applied to improve a local issue in your community, a problem that they want to seek to solve. And so, the other side of the coin of what happened during COVID was young people were really aware, self-aware, and aware around their peer group
Yeah.
about the struggles that they had during COVID, isolation, mental health issues, the environment with all of these PPE and other single-use types of supplies that were being used. And so while there was sort of time away from the traditional classroom, there was a heightened awareness of the world that was around them. including, the epicenter, which was COVID itself. And so the integration of problem-based learning with STEM is the idea of really, really simply taking your head out of the textbook in some ways, or like, the ebook, however you're learning, and really think about from the other way. There's a problem. It's important to you. You want to solve it. What are the tools that you need to know and information you need to gather and conclusions that you can make and actions you can take to solve that? And we know that innately young people today, especially this generation of students, they are impassioned to change the world in such a really special way. And like, they're not going to wait to their adults with power or, wait for their turn. They are impatient, they're eager, they are ready to do it today. And we see this generation really bypassing, like, when it's your time, say the time is now. The issues of the world are today, and I need to make a difference. And rather than just saying, great, we're saying, here are the tools you need to make that happen. Go do it. And problem-based learning and STEM skills are that perfect marriage of how to solve a problem and tools you need to get to that problem. Not just, you can talk about it, but here are really important ways you can do it. And STEM are those is a perfect skill set to make change happen.
Yeah. Now, I know my journey with STEM ended with summer school calculus. So that was one of those hard subject matters that you mentioned, where that's where my path got me into journalism and not into a particular STEM subject. Talk a little bit about how you can overcome those sort of things and those sort of hesitations when you're talking about serious math and serious science. When you talk about physics and chemistry, it can be intimidating, right? How are those sort of things overcome by educators?
Sure. So one is like showing them the change that can happen, right? So you want to change the world. You want the river in your community to go back to its natural state. You want to be able to go outside and breathe. You want to save a life, right? There are ways you can advocate in your community. You can vote. There's so many ways you can do it, but there's a certain power in creating the solution, to knowing that you have fixed something yourself and been part of that change. Part of the beauty of Samsung Solve for Tomorrow is that we are a classroom team-based competition. And so we recognize that not everyone is going to be the PhD chemist or physicist in the world today, but how great to be in a community, a team of students who are collectively learning and iterating off of each other, to really find the root cause of a problem and solve and advocate and work as a team to find that answer. And so even if you are not the hardcore scientist that, in your profession and your adulthood, everyone who's been part of the competition can appreciate this importance of STEM as an unlock to solving problems in a unique way. And that is power and impact that we see as much as those who become academics or professionals in STEM.
Yeah, this year's winners were had some pretty neat applications, from tracking bees to tracking students in terms of their health. Talk a little bit about the winners this year and what set them apart from all the other finalists and competitors.
Sure. So, one of the things we really admire in all of the entries that we get all year, first and foremost, is the ability to sort of look around the community and see what makes the difference. Be something hyper local, like a school in Florida coming up with a way to monitor temperature, because they have classmates who are all doing training in the hot months of the summer. And they actually saw that a lot of their students would go to the coach and say, I'm hot, I'm feeling dizzy. And the coach might say, go back in. This is an impartial data collection way to say, like, this player needs to take some time off the field or needs to go inside and cool down. And it is an impartial way to give a voice when a student doesn't feel heard. And for me, that was a really beautiful way to give voice to when a student feels unheard. And that's empathy for the student, and a real diagnostic, impartial way to give data so that adult coaches, for example, can make informed decisions. So we love the beauty of the empathy part of it and the idea of empowering and validating the student voice. Things like beehives, such a problem. It's a global problem. But to find a solution and to really go deep into the root cause, Porter High School did a fantastic job in identifying why bees may be dying, and look for ways. They talk to scientists, they talk to, you know, um, to beekeepers, and really try to understand hands-on, try to understand how to solve the problem. And so, the great thing for us at Samsung is we never have to come up with the challenge question, the topic at hand, because they're so much more creative than we could ever be. And so there's beauty in that. But the real magic is that we as a company get to hear what's top of mind for students. One of the rising issues over the years that we've seen are things like teenage mental health.
Yep.
It is something that really magnified itself during COVID, but it has been an ongoing issue over the years. Idea of social and emotional learning from your past podcast, this awareness among young people that there's more than academic success, or there's another element that are not that could be a barrier for young people to really fulfilling their full potential out there. And it's students talking to students and teams of classrooms across the country saying, I want to tackle this issue, that have risen up in small communities across the country, but we've seen this one of the many trends in our contest over the years. So it's been really fascinating. It's almost a grassroots pulse of what young people are thinking about, because it's the issue they want to solve, but really identifies the changing focus areas for young people that sometimes folks in government and big businesses and others don't really have the opportunity to hear from, but our competition has the privilege to really ask what matters to them.
Yeah. How has the process itself evolved over the years? I mean, 13 years ago, you're still kind of getting comfortable with the use of using Google, especially as a student, in terms of putting together projects and team building, and you certainly weren't using a team sharing apparatus or even a Zoom back then. I assume a lot of that now is being using these tools. Talk about that evolution in itself and the importance of, I mean, it's kind of meta, right? I mean, but it's like STEM into the STEM.
Yeah, no, it's great. Back in 2010, when we started the competition, we knew even back then that video form was the way that young people were learning, sharing, and really telling their own narrative in their lives. And so, a lot of competitions were still doing essays and, in-person interviews. We wanted to use a medium that spoke to them. And so, we've always had a video component of the competition, and it's been a great way, even as like new forms of social media have really exploded over the years. This is something that they know. And so Solve for Tomorrow has been great because they get to use the medium that works for them, which is multimedia, video form, and that has been consistent over time. I think over the years, what we've really seen is as technology evolves, how they're integrating technology into their solutions. So there are still projects that use data analysis. They put it in, a program like Excel, and they generate something out of it. But from a solution base, we're seeing some amazing things. We saw the advent of young people building apps, right, as a form of communication, emergency alerts, and really sharing, sometimes anonymously. A lot of times when young people are in crisis, having a community of fellow young people who can anonymously share through apps and searching for information can be sometimes a lifesaver for them. Over the years, we've seen the integration of things like augmented reality, artificial intelligence, that has really integrated itself in some amazing ways. We had a school from North Carolina several years ago that was integrating AI to help young people identify if an object could be recycled or not. I think we've all been standing in front of a trash receptacle or several, trying to figure out, is this paper, plastic, or trash, or some version of the two?
Right.
This was the integration for their school, where they can say, based on AI, to sort of predict what the object is and give advice on how to recycle it. And so it's great to see that tech for tech's sake is not so much, there's always like, there was a time when building up was the answer for everything. But now, what is the best use of the technology tools that we have to find the solution? So it's been amazing to see the adoption of new technologies, but really used in the right way to make that impact happen.
Hmm. No, we're talking about varieties of the acronym STEM, and a lot of times I see STEAM as an application applying the arts into it. You don't have the A in STEM. Is that a deliberate thing, or is it just something that you try to stay focused on a specific aspect? Talk a little bit
Well,
about that.
sure, there's two parts to it. One is that we want to move the needle on STEM, those harder subjects that we do think, produces amazing engineers and innovators, many of whom later on may work at Samsung,
Right.
and that building that STEM pipeline is a priority. Um, you know, all of the other letters in the various versions of the acronym are definitely part of the competition in its very essence as well. When we've thought about art, a lot of it is around design thinking, and just, iterating the best product or solution that works best. And so we consider the design thinking process, the engineering um, design process as part of it, and just the creativity of coming up with creative solutions. Some of the challenges that students are tackling, it has a lot of those elements in it. But we really want to, as part of the competition, really elevate the idea of STEM as an important field of study and way of thinking for young people today.
Yeah, yeah. Now, when you look forward, and again, you mentioned AI, which is on everyone's breath now. It's completely taken over the other acronym of COVID, thankfully, for better or
I'll
for
take
worse.
it.
Yeah, exactly. But what are your hopes for the I won't put you on the spot for the next 13 years. Let's just say the next 3 years. I mean, do you when you look towards the future, what do you see when it comes to both your prize as well as kind of the state of play of STEM in general?
Sure. So a lot of times when there's new technology, it's sort of an open area. And so what we've been really trying to do in our programs, such as Samsung Solve for Tomorrow, is really show how new tools can create real good. Social impact can happen with the advent of new things. When you think about the leaps that technology have given to folks in underserved communities, for example, we think about like broadband connectivity, right? The advent of being able to seek knowledge really easily and quickly, right? There's always a good aspect to technology. I think Shep heard it in the right way. And so things like the idea of technology and sensors to think about body temperature, or to think about, how to keep bees alive. These are fantastic ways in which we've been able to use technology in the right way that help communities in need and advance society for good. The one school I will also mention is Brandywine High School in Delaware, that have created assistive technology, but through better technology have been able to lower the cost of certain devices down by like a third, right? And so there's always a better, quicker way, as there are new technologies to make it more accessible and better than the iteration before. So we are very much focused on using new technologies in ways that advance the world with the voice of young people for good. And that's sort of the core of what we seek to achieve, as well as getting more students to become our future engineers and technologists and innovators for the future.
Well, so now for our readers and our listeners who are wondering how they can participate in this context next year, give us their first steps.
Sure. So the great part of concluding our 13th year is that we're already prepping for our 14th year. And so that will start in the fall. We will have a wonderful competition yet again for middle and high school students from public schools, grades 6 through 12, to come and enter your idea. The process is just a fantastic experience to meet other classrooms, to hear about topics of importance for them that could inspire your classroom as an educator to be part of, and really advance that idea of giving voice and power to young people in an empathetic way that drives further knowledge in STEM.
That's great. Well, Look forward to it. Thank you for all your work and the work that Samsung does with these kids. It's always nice to read about not only their successes but their innovations. Just makes the world seem that much brighter, right?
Yes, very much so. And it's very inspiring to be part of the program, but also to always be engaged with these young people doing amazing things.
Great. Well, and thanks again. I appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.